Hello, my name's Chris, what's yours? Welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me as we unfortunately have to bid a sad farewell to Roger Delgado's master. The Doctor, having his exile lifted and been able to resume his wanderings through the fourth and fifth dimensions, feels like it could be the most liberating thing that could happen to him. And, you know, I guess it is. Trapped on Earth, unless he was needed for an errand, felt like the worst punishment for the intrepid space and time explorer that we'd made friends with at the very beginning of the show. But it did serve, trapping him on Earth, to bring an element of claustrophobia to the show. Not necessarily a bad thing, considering Doctor Who very often operates on a level that serves to unnerve. And claustrophobia is a really good tool in unnerving an audience, and it did result in some really, really great stories. But even that said, having his exile lifted comes with it a sense of relief, as if the show is sort of like emerging from the basement, blinking and staggering into the light. But I don't think it's the Doctor who is most liberated by the end of his exile. I think Season 10 is starting to show me that more than the Doctor, more than the TARDIS, is actually the makers of the show who are most invigorated by this broader canvas and who are able to sort of like stretch their legs into the cosmos and into the vortex. Robert Holmes used it to piece together a really intricate piece of work that felt like the show was taking stock of itself as it was rediscovering its space-time legs. Whereas Malcolm Hulke uses it seemingly to tell the story it feels like he's been wanting to use Doctor Who to tell. Yeah, I know, it's not like he ever truly slacked off, and if anything, he was the one that probably grasped the earthbound setting of the Pertwee era better than most and was able to turn in some of the most assured stories of that time. But as the show branches out, I do feel like Hulk's sigh of relief is the loudest and most palpable. When he tackled Colony in Space, he seemed to cast the science fiction notion of interplanetary travel in quite a dim light. The problems that face humanity are not necessarily because of where we are, it's because of who we are. That is also true here, but on the much grander scale it feels like Hulke has been yearning for. While a wider canvas can call for broader strokes, he never truly abandons his idiosyncrasies. Red tape, tension rather than conflict, heroes and villains on both sides, green men, it's most certainly a Malcolm. Not exactly one to paint one side as virtuous and the other undesirable, Hulke sketches the animosity between the humans and the Draconians as slightly incompatible nations trying to find common ground, with a third party playing each side off of one another. Like Colony in Space, this element of the story need not, on the surface, be about aliens and spaceships. Except it absolutely does. As with Colony in Space, Hulke is saying that no matter how much we may dream of space travel and contact with intelligent alien beings, we won't automatically become enlightened as a result. Pettiness and suspicion of the other will persist, and it won't always necessarily come exclusively from us. That setting needs the message that it has. A more expansive setting makes the trivialities seem more trivial, and it's in the finer details where Hulke has always done his best work. The strengths of his Dino Men stories don't lie in the fact that they're just about lizards and sea monsters. It lies in the fact that they're about the possibility, and I guess the terrifying prospect of an inherent impossibility of peace between two different species. So the strengths of Frontier in Space aren't the spacey fights with nasty aliens, they're the reminders that however big space might be, the fundamentals of diplomacy and politics won't change. And while they won't inherently get bigger to fill the void themselves, the tiniest disagreement, perhaps between as little as two people, could snowball, and if that snowball has further to roll, out into the stars for example, then the impact will be more devastating than it has ever been. This is why I think Hulke has embraced the vast playground of Doctor Who untethered with open arms. Because the points he's been making so far have had to grow in laboratory conditions, whereas here he can take them out into the open and explore the logical conclusions of some of his very real worries and concerns about human nature and our capacity, our infinite capacity for colossal selfishness. And yeah, okay, that might be quite a grim conclusion to reach about humanity, but I do feel like And maybe I'm drawn to that, but I do feel like the possibility of how bleak humanity is fertile ground for exploration when it comes to writing, and certainly when it comes to science fiction ideas, because we're not just talking about human nature as we are now, although I think Malcolm Hulke and a lot of Doctor Who definitely is. We're imagining what humanity might be like given this opportunity, meeting different species, travelling to different planets, even travelling through time. Doctor Who asks that question as well. Science fiction takes scientific possibilities and imagines them, and imagines humanity's place in them. And sometimes, it will draw wonderful conclusions, and then other times it will draw less than flattering ones. Both of those approaches are valid, just because it might reach different conclusions from what we think, or from what we hope. And this is apparent even in the supporting cast. When the Doctor is in the moon prison and is sold out with the Professor to the guy in charge, he, doing the dobbing in, is doing so for personal gain and reward. That he cannot consider the bigger picture makes him very much a Hulke character. Like Trenchard, Walker and Lawrence, Hulke crafts his villains as people who cannot view the world around them, only themselves within the world. Homo Reptilia can't possibly have a legitimate claim to the planet. There can't possibly be good and level-headed people among their number. That's what seems to be going through the minds of those characters, and in Frontier in Space, the idea that there's a third party that's playing Earth and Draconia off against each other, rather than, from some of the Draconians' point of view, Earth being inherently evil, or from some of the Earthlings' point of view, Draconia being inherently evil, it's unimaginable. It just doesn't cross their mind. We're the human race, after all. We'd never be fooled into thinking such things. No, the Draconians must be all inherently evil. Thankfully, not everybody thinks this, and I know that what I was saying earlier about the unflattering depiction of humanity can sometimes rub people up the wrong way within science fiction. It's not that everybody does think like that, but we can't deny that that way of thinking is prevalent even today. For example, when it concerns like Islam, Judaism, even just refugees in general. This sort of thing, combined with living in the early 21st century, where to me it seems like technology is advancing far more quickly than our intelligence, certainly more quickly than our emotional intelligence, then it means that Malcolm Hulke's vision of Doctor Who speaks to me all the more. Namely, that as it stands at the moment, we're not ready for this sort of responsibility. We're not as advanced as we think we are just because we've been able to develop cardigans and bricks. But I do think that the way we treat each other even now sort of speaks to the fact that we're not ready to shoot the breeze with life forms from other planets. We have toys, but no one to take them away from us when we misbehave. And so, I guess maybe when the time comes, unless we do something to sort it out, we'll go into the stars like the spoiled children we are. And I think maybe that's kind of what Malcolm Hulke might be getting at. Now, when he was working on Doctor Who 50 plus years ago, we didn't have the technological capabilities that we have now, so maybe I am projecting too much onto this story, but I maintain not by much. Because after all, this is Hulke playing in the Doctor Who toy box, where he is imagining that we do have those technological capabilities, and he's still making the same point. He's telling us to be careful, but more than that, I get the impression that through his work on Doctor Who, that if he could, he'd tell others to be careful of us. Not that his take on Doctor Who is completely favoured towards the political and the weighty at the expense of entertainment and fun, because this story still works as a campy space adventure. It even works as a simple capture, recapture, mind probe, recapture caper. I just see more to it than that. And now perhaps, again, I am projecting, but given what we know of Malcolm Hulke, I'd be very surprised if it was just me. Another reason why this story works so well, beyond all of the polemic, is that Malcolm Hulke has written for this Doctor every year so far, and so he's got a really good grasp on the character, the leading man's portrayal of him, and his relationships with both his companion and arch nemesis. This fluency with the personnel means that he can imbue his big ideas and grand canvas with some excellent characterisation, which is only bolstered by the really strong performances from the regular cast. And those things combined make for another of this story's considerable strengths. When imprisoned, one of the occasions that they are imprisoned, Jo does a lot of thinking aloud to the Doctor, formulating a variety of outlandish escape plans. Her eagerness and vivacity is lovely to watch, and it is wonderfully counterbalanced by the Doctor's weary patience with her. And they both play it excellently, and, if it were possible, further enhance the very potent chemistry the pair of them have displayed for a good long while now. Their singing and such a leading duo means that the show is currently entertaining on some level, if even perhaps the story doesn't quite live up to them. Luckily, I do think this one does. Let it be said that while I do agree with Hulke and think that his take on Doctor Who is one of the most valid, the most interesting, and, as it happens, one of the most influential ones, that doesn't mean I automatically consider his stories to be, inherent classics. Although a lot of them happen to be, it's not that I automatically consider them to be because I happen to agree with Hulke. They engage and stimulate me, no question, but if I actually dig deep, there are probably a lot more stories that entertain me more. So I do find Frontier in Space nourishing, but I can't deny that sometimes, very occasionally, it feels a little bit like a tough old meal. So once I tune into the capture, recapture, mind probe, recapture, repetition, I notice that, and I do kind of a little bit go, oh, only a little bit though. Because Roger Delgado comes in, he swoops in and just gives everything a lift. I didn't mention it when I covered the Three Doctors because, as I said, it was the Doctor's party, but I really missed him in that story. It was the ideal story for him to pop up in, although that's not to say that I'm sad to see him here. I'm never sad to see Roger Delgado pop up as the Master. He's always a great presence. And his appearance here does give the story a boost as it leads towards the conclusion. Pertwee seemed rejuvenated this season anyway, and as discussed before, he always seems to sort of come to life that little bit more whenever Delgado shows up, and his
"You feeling all right, Roger?"
as the Master pontificates before the Draconian Emperor is superb. Point of fact, that scene...
How dare you address the Emperor in a manner reserved for a noble of Draconia?
But I am a noble of Draconia. The honor was conferred on me by the 15th Emperor.
The 15th Emperor reigned 500 years ago.
Is etched into my mind's eye forevermore because it was very prominently featured in the 30 years in the TARDIS documentary that I rewatched and rewatched and rewatched. I wore the VHS tape out when it aired. The Draconians themselves are some of the best design work the series ever saw. They are a brilliant creation, both in the writing and in the realisation. So much so that I'm left simultaneously scratching my head as to why they were never resurrected, because look, there's so much mileage in their situation with Earth and in what little we see of their own culture. And also thankful that they weren't brought back because of the possibility of diminishing returns. Their one-off status helps to enhance this story that little bit more. Now, I mean, look, the Radio Times at the time may well have given it away, but the first time I watched this story, I had no idea the Daleks were going to show up. And because of that, their appearance at the end still will always carry weight with me, because whenever I watch it, I remember the feeling of not knowing. The Master revealing them to the Doctor at the end is a gold-plated Doctor Who moment, and because of how I remember it, it sort of ends up feeling a little bit like a fitting end to Roger Delgado's time on the show. Not that there really would have been one of those, because it's a shame that his time on the show came to an end at all. That would have been the case at any point, but the fact that it was cut so short and in such a tragic circumstance is it's really, really sad. What a fantastic presence he has been. He created a multifaceted villain and, as far as I'm concerned, never dropped the ball once. And, emerged in a lot of his stories as the best thing in them. And in those that he didn't, it wasn't through want of trying. He made such an impression that his character remains with us even now, which is almost as big an achievement as the Doctor himself. No mean feat. Roger, you were boss. 343 episodes down, and the show will never be the same again, while remaining fundamentally Doctor Who. And at this point in the show, it's always a little bit bittersweet, because I am very sad to have said goodbye to Roger Delgado, but I am super excited to have said hello again to all of time and space. The Doctor, Joe and the Master all being brought before the Draconian Emperor. They don't half escape and get recaptured a lot, and quickly. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this foray into the frontier, then you know how YouTube works. Please do give it a like and a big old share. And what do you think of Frontier in Space? Is it a fitting end to Roger Delgado's time on the show, or did his untimely death rob us of maybe his best ever story? Is this an entertaining story in its own right? Does it stand by itself, or is it just an overlong prelude to the next Dalek caper? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for a video all on Roger Delgado's Master. I've been doing one for each Doctor at the end of their eras, so I thought it's only fair. But it does obviously increase the cosplay load. So if you don't want to miss any of those, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I will see you soon.